Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this presentation. A very unique one, not something that people really look into when talking about Chernobyl. Now, every time when April comes around, I usually get obsessed with Chernobyl. It's the month that the nuclear power plant's reactor 4 exploded in 1986 on the 26th of April. And I tend to go down a lot of rabbit holes when researching on it. And I recently came across and read a report on the military organizations involved in post-Chernobyl operations and found it quite fascinating. Tonight, I will present some of the information I gathered from this report, and it was made by William C. Potter in March 1990, so just a couple of years after Reactor 4 exploded. And this investigation he made was funded by the National Council for Soviet and Eastern European Research. Now, we all know to some extent the story of Chernobyl and what happened on 26 April 1986 and the days, weeks, months, and years after. Some were alive when it happened and saw it on the news. Others, like me, heard about it when HBO dropped the trailer for the Chernobyl series. Now, the Chernobyl command structure involved various Soviet military units and civilian authorities. Initially overseen by Boris Shabina, the government commission organized the response, including calling in helicopter units and chemical troops. Operational groups were established in Moscow within the Politburo, General Staff, and chemical troops. Constant consultation occurred between the on-scene commission and Moscow specialists. A central command post was set up on May 7th, led by Ivan Siliev and Colonel B. Dolgopolov, and General Valentin Varenikov later coordinated military operations at Chernobyl. Now, the Soviet chemical troops played a very crucial role at Chernobyl, mostly at the start, and their task was to clean up the chemicals in and around the area. They were tasked with defense against chemical, nuclear, and bacteriological threats and conducted reconnaissance to identify contamination, monitored radiation levels, and managed cleanup efforts. Despite these men's bravery and the numerous challenges they faced in the days, weeks, and months after April 26th, they did a fairly good job. There was leadership, a lack of leadership, and a lot of secrecy with leadership. Obviously, we know about the KGB, who tried to silence a lot of the information coming out of Chernobyl and the town of Pripyat. Some other problems included ineffective decontamination methods, outdated dosimetric equipment, and shortage of basic supplies for the men and women on the ground. Safety lapses and errors in decision makings further complicated the response, such as delays in evacuations and inadequate training for reservists. Overall, while the chemical troops displayed courage, their effectiveness was hindered by systemic issue and leadership shortcomings, but they still did a fairly good job with the equipment they had and the circumstances that the higher ups put them in. And on the right, We have General Major Vladimir Pikolov, the commander of the chemical troops that were present at Chernobyl, and he was in charge of the specialized military units at the site and in the surrounding area. And he arrived at the scene on the afternoon of 26 April 1986 and assumed command of the specialized military units there. And for his actions at Chernobyl, he was later made a hero of the Soviet Union. And he is very famously portrayed in Chernobyl, the miniseries, as the one to break the news that um, the radiation is way more than red on the normal equipment. Next up, we have the Soviet Air Force, who also played a critical role at the start of the disaster and is excellently portrayed in the HBO show, but more on that later. And their task was the urgent mission to drop sand and boron from helicopters to contain the still burning reactor of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. And under the leadership of Major General Antoshkin, the air crews faced significant challenges in swiftly executing this operation. Despite the urgency that they needed to stop the fires in the reactor, the initial delays hampered the deployment of suitable helicopters and equipment, compounded by a lack of radiation measuring aircrafts. The general and his team showed remarkable ingenuity and adaptability in overcoming these obstacles. They devised innovative methods to increase the efficiency of sand delivery, such as suspending sandbags from helicopters using makeshift systems. And despite the extreme hazards and demanding conditions that flying over a burning open nuclear reactor, the pilots demonstrated extraordinary courage and resourcefulness in the efforts to contain that fire. However, the operation also revealed systemic shortcomings within the Air Force. Issues like inadequate equipment and coordination, coupled with lapses in safety protocols, pose significant risks to the aircrew and the overall effectiveness of the mission. Some pilots lacked discipline and failed to monitor their radiation exposure properly, leading to preventable accidents and potential harmful overexposure. While the operation ultimately succeeded in smothering the reactor with sand, it underscored the need for improvements in safety protocols, equipment readiness, and coordination procedures within the Air Force. And the lessons learned from Chernobyl was later used to better the Russian Air Force. And for those that have watched the HBO Chernobyl show, will recognize a scene very similar to this one. And this was because of all the smoke coming out of Reactor 4 and that crane, the pilot of this poor helicopter failed to see the crane and he flew straight into one of the crane's parts and the helicopter fell, lost signal, and killed everyone on board. And this is just one of the many problems faced by the Air Force in dropping sand and boron on the reactor. Next up, we have the engineer troops, who were almost the same as the chemical troops, and they specialized under the Ministry of Defense, offering crucial engineering support across the various military services present at Chernobyl and Pripyat. Their tasks ranged from constructing bridges to preparing defenses against nuclear threats. And during the Chernobyl disaster, their arrival timeline remains pretty unclear, but the initial focus was to clear a path to reactor number 4 using controlled explosions and specialized vehicles. Despite the technical challenges, they adapted quickly, showcasing innovative problem solving with everyone that was on the ground. And collaborating with civilians, they swiftly constructed levees along the Pripyat River to prevent contamination of the Kiev reservoir. And they demonstrated quite effectively. And additionally, they reinforced damaged reactors' foundation, showing precision and technical expertise. Despite equipment limitations and logistical issues, the engineered troops exhibited commendable courage and resourcefulness. Their seamless coordination with civilian workers and other military units underscored their effectiveness under pressure, and overall, the engineered troops displayed operational readiness and adaptability in addressing the Chernobyl disaster's challenges. And finally, we have the civilians of these civil defense units in the Soviet Union under the Chief of Civil Defense. And they were responsible for various disaster response tasks, including rescue operations and decontamination efforts. During the Chernobyl disaster, they played a crucial role in evacuating locals, conducting radiation reconnaissance, and pumping out water from beneath the damaged reactor. However, their performance was marred by significant shortcomings. They lacked effective radiation reconnaissance capabilities, leading to unnecessary exposure to high levels of radiation. Additionally, they were very ill prepared for an accident of Chernobyl's magnitude, and they faced a lot of manpower shortages and equipment issues. Criticism also arose regarding their handling of civil defense propaganda, both before and after the disaster. Poor media coverage resulting in misinformation and lack of timely warnings for residents contributed to a sense of unease and confusion. While some civil units displayed courage and skill overall, their performance fell short of expectations. Reports highlight deficiencies in training, equipment, and organizational procedures, indicating a need for improvement in crisis response capabilities. As a consequence of these fallings, no civil defense representatives were honored for exceptional performance, and the Chief of Civil Defense was replaced shortly after the accident, reflecting the inadequacies exposed by the Chernobyl disaster. And I want to end off tonight with a quote that appears in the series, said by Valery Legasov. Quote, "To be a scientist is to be naive. We are so focused on our search for truth, we fail to consider how few actually want us to find it. But it is always there, whether we see it or not, whether we choose to or not. The truth doesn't care about our needs or wants. It doesn't care about our governments, our ideologies, our religions. It will lie in wait for all time. And this, at last, is the gift of Chernobyl. Where I once would fear the cost of truth, now I only ask, what is the cost of lies?" Thank you.